Thanks, guys. My name's Jason Roberts. I'm from Oak Cliff, Texas, which is in Dallas. It's always been considered kind of the bad part of town. Lived there with my wife about 10 years ago. This is a picture of me and my community, what kind of I'm known for. I'm called the bike guy or the alternative transportation guy. Our city has not been very active about promoting things like bicycling and walking, so I've learned to take it on myself. So where did all this start? My wife and I went to Europe about 10 years ago. And I'd go to these great plazas like in Italy, and I'd see these amazing, beautiful fountains and these places where old people could linger with their grandchildren, and these great markets that were buzzing with life and with energy. And then I'd go to places like in the north and see in Scandinavia, these beautiful old buildings with these small little shops everywhere and these little streets and people riding their bicycles everywhere. And then I came back to Dallas and I thought, well, where are we building? What's going to be our legacy? What's going to be our thing that lasts 1,000 years like these things? When I got back home, I saw this stuff. And I remember thinking, wow, where can I put my cafe table? Like, where can I have like my bicycle ride with my grandchild someday? So this is like our aqueducts. This is what we're passing on for 1,000 years. This is what we're saying this is our priority as our city. So my first step, I thought, well, you know what? I'm going to get involved. I'm going to start meeting people in my community. I'm going to go to those local organizations like the Chambers and the Lions Clubs and all those things. And when you walk into a room and you see a bunch of people that look like this, the thing, you think, I don't belong here. These aren't my people. This is not, But the thing is, that's the worst thing you can do because these are actually the doers. These are the guys that are showing up. These are the guys that come out and want to make things better. They are looking for leaders and people to take on charges so they can stand behind. So don't walk away from these folks. You need these. So within my community, I thought, okay, what can I start on? I want to fix something. I want to help something. We had this old theater that was beautiful, but it was falling apart. It was the Texas Theater. It's over on Jefferson Boulevard, and it was boarded up. It's kind of well known because this is where Lee Harvey Oswald was captured in '63. So I thought, why don't I take this theater and see if I can do something with it? I brought some friends together, and I said, let's do a giant art show inside. And we created all these little easels, and again, it had been boarded up for 10 years or so. Nobody had come in, dusty, falling apart. The sign was falling apart. And we said, I got some friends that were artists. I'm in a band as well, so I've been in music and things like that. So I brought my friends together and said, let's bring out 100 of our friends, and we'll just paint these easels, and we'll sell them all the next day. So a few minutes before we're about to open the door to this, we're thinking, what are we, crazy? This is nuts. This is in the bad part of town. It was winter at the time, and it's an old theater that people don't ever think to go to. This is going to be an abject failure. We put all this money on our credit cards. What were we thinking? But when we opened the doors, we had 700 people show up. And at that point, people came out and said, we love this. This is great. We were waiting for someone to fix this space, and we're so glad you did this. So at that point, we learned, wow, if somebody just stands up and takes an initiative and starts just giving people an idea to change the perception of a place, it makes a huge difference. So drunk with excitement and enthusiasm and thinking, wow, if I can do that, what else can I do? I went to my local library and looked at the map of my community. I saw I had all these old buildings that were falling apart within my community. And I tried to figure out, well, where were these buildings and how do they relate to the neighborhood? And I noticed they were they were all attached to the streetcar line. We used to have a streetcar like 70 years ago or 50 years ago. So that night I went home and I created a website called the Oak Cliff Transit Authority. I had nice maps. I had news sections and newsletters because I knew how to build websites, so I could do that. Now again, it was just me, but within like a week, the local newspaper picked up the story. And it's funny, he says, dreaming of the day the streetcars return, Oak Cliff's future could very well be tied to a trip to the past. That's what Jason Roberts and other members of the recently formed Oak Cliff Transit Authority are hoping. There were no other members. But the cool thing about this was that people in my community who had been used to being the bad part of town were like, wow, we've got a streetcar group? This is awesome. I want to take part. And I had like engineers that were legit started calling me. I had people that love streetcars that started calling. And at that point I said, well, let's create an official board. So we created a board and it was legitimate, and we started our nonprofit movement with that. If you're passionate about something, you're probably going to be a leader because just that passion is going to be broadcast within the community, and people are going to want to get behind you. So take that charge and run with it. Okay, so now we're doing streetcars, I got bicycles, I got old theaters. Instead of just doing a theater, I got a whole block here that's been abandoned or been boarded up. And when I looked at it, I tried to figure out, well, what's holding this block back? And what I found was, okay, in the 70s, this used to be the streetcar stop as well. They turned it into a one-way street and widened it. They thinned the sidewalks. They created these zoning rules and things like that apparently been on for like 70 years or so, that showed, these things that were, basically crippling the potential for this to be the little neighborhood gathering spot. You couldn't do all the things you wanted to do. So I started looking at all the ordinances that weren't allowed, or that were cost prohibitive. Like to put flowers on the sidewalk, it was $1,000, and to do cafe seating was $1,000 times area market value times 85% times 12%. And then we had crowds weren't allowed to gather. You couldn't have awnings and arcades, and it gets really hot in Dallas. It gets hot here too. Use of sidewalks to display merchandise, so we couldn't do fruit stands. We couldn't do all those things. So we looked at this block. I thought, well, obviously, we're not allowed to do any of this stuff that would make this really cool. So what would happen if we tried to break every law we possibly could over a weekend? So we did. We painted our own bike lanes. We brought in cafe seating. We brought in this whole historic lights and things like that. We brought in flowers, and then we started printing up all the rules we were breaking, and we put them on the windows, and we invited the city staff and the council members out and said, come to our party, and they didn't know what we were doing. They're like, oh, this is great, I love this. And they're like, oh, we're not supposed to be here. But what happened was this became so powerful for the community and then for the city leadership to see this. And they came back and they said, we don't know why these rules have been on the books for so years. We should change these things. So a lot of the issues we're faced with, and I think this happens across the nation, we're basically hamstrung by a series of rules that were put in place years ago that we don't even know why we're doing. We just keep doing it. We created a bunch of pop-up businesses as well in those vacant spaces. We went in and we created a coffee shop. We went into an old garage, and we turned it into a kids' art studio. We created flower markets. What happened after this project, too, was really cool, we didn't expect, was one of the shops became permanent. It was so loved by the community that it's become an art studio. They offer kids classes during the days, at night. They do adult classes, so I can learn how to brew beer and cool things like that. So it's been a fixture. It's now an anchor to the area. This would have never happened. I think the hurdles to starting business now are so high in people's minds. These ideas of I've got to create pro formas, and I got to get all these long insurances, these permits. It's going to take years. It's going to cost hundreds of thousands of dollars. I'm going to give up. Our idea was hey, let's just do it on a weekend. As a community, we'll help fix the stage. You just do your art, and let us help you. And what we found is when people actually get a chance just to focus on what they love, and the community helps them, it can stay, and they'll figure out all the rest later on. Concrete. So we took the street, and we brought 42 trees, and we brought 100 bushes to create pedestrian islands. We got some old pallets, and we made decks. We did the pop-up shops again. We created places for people to linger. We took those poles, and we just put bicycles on it, because remember, now we're the bike part of town. That's what we told everybody. And they believed it. And that's the cool thing is people now are moved to the area because they're like, this is the bike part of town. So it's become a self-fulfilling prophecy. We created our crosswalks. You're not supposed to do that. But then we went in and we brought in tables and chairs in the parking space and places to linger. And we couldn't get people out of here. That was the problem. It was 100 degrees. And as long as people have a great place that they love, they're going to come out. And you're actually going to have a hard time kind of kicking them out. In our community, we had rendering fatigue. We'd seen all these architects that had showed these designs of how cool things would be. And they'd plug in trees and they'd Photoshop people. But these are real people. They're not Photoshopped. And these are real bicycles and real trees. And that's a real pole that has something on it now. So I had another group that had a dog park they've been trying to work on for a year. And they've been talking to the council member. The council member said, I talked to the city officials, city staff, and they said that it has to be on 30 acres to do a dog park, which means it's going to have to be far away from our community. It's going to take us, millions of dollars. And they came to me and asked me, well, what would you do in this scenario? And we're standing across this field that people were dumping on. And I said, well, why don't we make that into a dog park? And they're like, okay. We could do that. It's in the neighborhood. It's small. We could prove that we can do a small dog park. And they're like, okay, we'll do some fundraisers. We'll raise some money. We'll do some community pledge drives and things like that. It might take us 8 or 9 months and all. Is that what you're thinking? I'm like, no, let's do it next weekend. So we did. We basically found a bunch of our trees that had fallen down from a storm, so we mulched our own trees. We made the official Dallas Park sign ourselves for our pop-up pooch park. We made swings for kids because we found it's important whenever you create great public spaces to have things for 8 and 80-year-olds. My friend had goats, so we brought his goat fencing out. And so now this dog park is going to be installed permanently. It's going to be another area from this, but just not far from this. So this project really kind of opened the eyes of the community and the city to see maybe we were doing things wrong. Okay, now the Better Block, this thing we did a year and a half ago, it's going all over the country. So we've been kind of blown away by that part. That's something I didn't expect because we were just trying to fix our own community. And I've been flying all over, which has been surreal for somebody who, wasn't in the world of consulting and things like that, to actually get to talk to people about these things. This is what's been amazing about this. And we're getting to do projects. I'm working on a project in San Antonio right now, and Wichita, and New York did one. A lot of communities, we kind of open sourced it, treat it like Linux. You guys do it yourself. If you want us to help, we'll help as well. So my little band of streetcar group at the beginning, we were out and we started studying all these other cities, and it was like 5 of us, and this is us in Portland meeting with officials, and we told the city, we heard about these grants that are coming around to try to build infrastructure in certain cities to help, like stimulus grants, and they're like, yeah, whatever, Oak Cliff, go ahead, you apply for those grants, and we're like, okay, we will, and we'll see what happens. And what happened was we won a grant. We're bringing the streetcar back to Oak Cliff. $23 million we're coming back. All I did was create a website. So that's what I have to remind people, remember, that's how these things start. You don't have to have everything worked out. So kind of want to step through really what we need to do in order to make things happen, what I found. First and foremost, show up. If you don't show up, she will, and she's against everything. Yeah. So, and the thing is, nobody shows up. You learn that real fast. It's like 5 or 6 people. It's always the same people. So if you just keep showing up, that guy keeps showing up, and you're the guy that's saying, I'm going to bring the streetcar back, it's probably going to work because nobody else is doing anything. That also means be present. Be there for your community. Figure out a way that you can make things better. We all have skills we can bring to the table. Next thing we found is give it a name. Just naming something. That simple thing creates an identity and builds pride in something. So we created our Art Conspiracy and our Bike-Friendly Oak Cliff and Oak Cliff Transit Authority. We made fancy logos. And there was one guy who had a cluster of buildings in our community, and he just decided to call them the Bishop Arts District. And it's become kind of the Renaissance turnaround area because everyone's like, wow, we got a place called the Bishop Arts District. So that's why I always tell people, just name whatever it is you're doing. And then lastly, set a date and publish it. And I call it blackmail yourself. This is what I do all the time. I won't even know more than 10% of what we're going to do for a Better Block project, but I have the poster ready, and I've got my friends on board, and then we publish it and say, we're going to do a Better Block, and everyone's like, oh no, we're doing it in 60 days too, so we have to commit. And we always like to do short time frames to commit to these things, because if we don't, we tend to want to back out. We'll talk ourselves out of why we shouldn't do these things or why it's going to be a problem. So I like to get everybody on the hook. So that's it for me, guys. Thank you so much.